During a lavish ceremony at a sprawling estate, everything seemed picture perfect. But what no one expected was the appearance of a dirty little girl, barefoot, who came running in from the back. The millionaire ordered her to be thrown out. But what happened next would forever change both of their destinies. Subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories delivered daily. Steam rose from the champagne flutes as guests mingled on the estate's manicured lawns. Flowers imported from dozens of different countries adorned every corner, and the perfume in the air was as soft as the murmur of elegant conversations. At the center of it all, the millionaire surveyed his empire with a mix of pride and emptiness. His fingers drummed impatiently on his crystal glass. His lips practiced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. 8 years building an empire that spanned 3 continents. 8 years turning pain into ambition. 8 years trying to forget. "Nervous?" asked the best man, adjusting his Italian silk tie. "Just impatient to get it over with," he replied, glancing at the Swiss watch that gleamed on his wrist. His tone carried no emotion whatsoever. Across town, in a maze of back alleys and rundown streets, the 7-year-old girl woke up inside a cardboard box soaked by the previous night's rain. Her possessions consisted of a tattered blanket, a doll missing an arm, and an old, mysterious necklace that she treasured. She rubbed her eyes with her dirty little hands and watched the street come to life. Her stomach ached with hunger. She hadn't eaten anything for 3 days, except for the scraps she found in restaurant dumpsters. "The rich folks are having a party today," said an older street kid, pointing towards the wealthy side of town. "They say there's more food than they can eat." The girl's eyes lit up. Not for the food, but for a strange feeling that had been with her for weeks. An inexplicable calling, as if someone were waiting for her somewhere. At the estate, the final details were being arranged. The bride, an international model known for gracing magazine covers, smiled with satisfaction as her assistants adjusted her $500,000 gown. The wedding would cement her social standing and guarantee access to the fortune she so desired. "He doesn't show it, but he's happy," commented her mother, a socialite with a plastic smile. "After everything that happened with his first wife, I didn't think he'd ever remarry." The bride merely smiled, indifferent to the tragedy that had marked the life of the man she was about to marry. To her, it was just an inconvenient chapter she preferred to ignore. The millionaire adjusted his cufflinks as he observed the activity on the lawn. Behind his dark sunglasses, his eyes scanned the horizon, as if searching for something lost long ago. There was no joy in his expression, only the calculated coldness of someone who had learned to live without feeling. The girl, meanwhile, walked through the streets with a determination she couldn't explain. The necklace around her neck seemed to burn, guiding her like an invisible compass to a destination she didn't understand, but felt deep in her soul. 2 completely different worlds, about to collide irreversibly. The violins played a classical melody as the guests took their seats. Celebrities, politicians, and tycoons settled into golden chairs decorated with rare orchids. The millionaire stood at the makeshift altar under a canopy of crystals and flowers, his face an impenetrable mask of indifference. The sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink that were reflected in the reflecting pools strategically placed around the lawn. Discreet photographers captured every moment, ensuring that the union would be immortalized in the pages of the world's most prominent magazines. "Still time to bolt," whispered the best man in a joking tone. "Wouldn't be the first time someone ran away from me," the millionaire replied, with a bitter sarcasm that instantly withered his friend's smile. Outside the high walls of the estate, the girl watched the activity. Armed security guards patrolled the perimeter, but she had learned to be invisible on the streets. With the agility of a cat, she found a breach in the security system, a service door temporarily open for a flower delivery. Her heart beat faster, not from fear of being discovered, but from an inexplicable sense of urgency. The necklace around her neck felt hotter, as if responding to the proximity of something or someone. Inside the estate, the wedding march began to play. The bride emerged in all her glory, floating down the red carpet like an ethereal vision in white and silver. The guests gasped in admiration, cameras flashed, and proud smiles blossomed on the faces of her parents. The millionaire watched her approach with the same distant gaze he reserved for multi-million-dollar contracts and tense negotiations. There was no love in his eyes, only the cold resolve of someone fulfilling another step in the plan he had laid out for his life. It was at this precise moment, when the bride was halfway down the aisle, that a murmur began to form at the back of the hall. The girl had entered, her bare and dirty feet contrasting violently with the surrounding luxury. Her presence caused first astonishment, then outrage, but she didn't stop. Guided by a force she didn't understand, she advanced down the center aisle, ignoring the horrified stares and the growing murmurs. "Get out of here! This is no place for a beggar!" shouted a security guard, moving to stop her. The millionaire, irritated by the interruption of the moment he had planned with such precision, turned around furiously. "Get that child out of here immediately," he ordered, with a voice full of the authority that made executives tremble in boardrooms. But then, something extraordinary happened. When his eyes met the girl's, time seemed to freeze. A primal, visceral recognition ran through his body like an electric shock. Those eyes, that look. And then he saw the necklace hanging around the child's dirty neck. A necklace he knew better than anyone else in the world. His knees buckled. The most powerful man in the country fell to his knees at the altar, under the astonished gaze of hundreds of guests and the relentless flash of cameras. The bride, paralyzed halfway down the aisle, watched the scene with disbelief. What should have been the pinnacle of her social ascension was rapidly turning into her worst nightmare. And the girl simply stopped, looking at the kneeling man with a mixture of curiosity and inexplicable recognition. A stunned silence fell over the room. The guests watched, dumbfounded, as the millionaire, always so composed and controlled, emotionally unraveled before them. His breathing became heavy and ragged, his hands trembling visibly. "Get her out of here!" shouted the bride's mother, recovering from the initial shock. "Call more security!" Two burly men moved towards the girl, who remained motionless, her large eyes fixed on the kneeling man. But, with a sharp wave of his hand, the millionaire stopped them. "Stop!" His voice was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "No one touches her!" Slowly, as if fearing the child might dissolve into thin air, he rose and took a hesitant step towards her. His eyes, normally cold and calculating, now overflowed with a raw, uncontrollable emotion. "Where did you come from?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The girl clutched the necklace between her small, dirty fingers in a protective gesture that did not go unnoticed. "The streets," she replied simply, with the direct honesty of children. "And that necklace, where did you get it?" "I've always had it. It's mine." The bride advanced down the aisle, her face a mask of fury barely concealed beneath a forced smile. "Honey, can we continue? This situation can be resolved later." But the millionaire didn't seem to hear her. His world had shrunk to that dirty child and the necklace she wore. The same necklace he had given his wife on the day they discovered her pregnancy. A personalized, unique necklace with an inscription that only the two of them knew. "This is ridiculous," exclaimed the bride's father, an influential politician. "Some employee must have given information to this street urchin. It's clearly an extortion attempt." The millionaire finally turned his gaze away from the child, his face hardening again. The momentary vulnerability gave way to a fierce determination. "I need to verify something," he said, his voice regaining its usual authority. "The ceremony is temporarily suspended." A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd. The bride, feeling her big moment crumble, grabbed the millionaire's arm tightly. "You can't be serious!" You're not going to interrupt our wedding because of this interloper. He removed her hand with a gentleness that contrasted with the coldness in his eyes. That's exactly what I'm doing. Turning to his personal assistant, who was watching the scene with astonishment, the millionaire gave quick instructions. Take the girl to my office. Call Dr. Mendez immediately. I want a DNA test with the highest priority. DNA? The bride's voice rose in disbelief. Have you completely lost your mind? For a moment, the millionaire seemed to waver. Logic and reason, his most faithful companions for the past 8 years, screamed that this was impossible. His wife had disappeared. The search had lasted for months. The best private investigators had found nothing. Experts had confirmed that, given the circumstances, the probability of survival was 0. Maybe I'm wrong, he murmured, more to himself than to others. But I need to be sure. The girl, watching the commotion around her, clutched the necklace tighter. There was something familiar about this man, something that made her childish heart race with a mixture of fear and hope. "Come with me," said an assistant, extending her hand to the child. Hesitantly, the girl took a step back. Years on the streets had taught her to distrust the sudden kindness of adults. "I'm not going to hurt you," the woman assured her with a strained smile. "We just want to talk." The girl's eyes sought the millionaire's, as if asking for confirmation. Without a word, he nodded slightly. Something about that simple gesture seemed to reassure her, and she finally accepted the outstretched hand. As the two walked away, chaos erupted. Guests exchanged confused glances, the bride's family demanded explanations, and photographers snapped their cameras frantically, capturing what promised to be the social scandal of the year. The millionaire remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the spot where the girl had disappeared. It was impossible. It was irrational. It was against all odds. And yet his heart, so long silenced by pain, cried out a truth that his rational mind struggled to accept. In the millionaire's private office, the girl sat uncomfortably on the edge of an Italian leather armchair. Her eyes wandered around the room with curiosity, lingering on the expensive paintings, the shelves of untouched books, and the decorative objects that cost more than many people earned in years. The assistant had brought her a sandwich and a glass of milk, which she devoured with the voracity of someone who doesn't know when the next meal will come. From time to time, her free hand touched the necklace, as if to make sure it was still there. Outside, the chaos continued. The bride had locked herself in one of the estate's rooms, refusing to come out or speak to anyone. The guests, divided between leaving or staying for the sheer spectacle of the drama, huddled in small groups, speculating about what was happening. The millionaire paced back and forth in the hallway, waiting for the doctor to arrive. In his mind, a fierce battle raged. The rational part, the same one that had built an empire from the rubble of his personal life, insisted that this was a cruel coincidence or, worse, an elaborate extortion attempt. But there was another part, long silenced by pragmatism, that whispered a possibility as painful as it was hopeful. "She has the same eyes," he murmured to himself. "And the necklace. How could she have the necklace?" The doctor arrived discreetly, carrying a medical bag. He was a middle-aged man, with kind eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses, the same doctor who had overseen his wife's pregnancy 8 years earlier. "This is madness," the doctor said in a low voice. "You know that, don't you?" The millionaire simply nodded, unable to articulate the conflicting thoughts that consumed him. Together, they entered the office. The girl looked up, crumbs around her mouth, and a flicker of recognition seemed to pass between her and the doctor, although it was impossible that they knew each other. "Hello," said the doctor, approaching with a gentle smile. "My name is Dr. Mendez. What's your name?" The girl hesitated, looking from one man to the other. "I don't have a name," she replied finally. "On the streets, they call me a lot of things." The millionaire's heart clenched at those words. A child without a name, an identity erased by misery. "We need to do a little test," explained the doctor, opening his bag. "It will only hurt a little, like an ant bite." Her small hands seemed bare and vulnerable, without the amulet that had always been with her. The millionaire turned the small pendant between his fingers, his entire body rigid with anticipation. And there it was, engraved on the back in tiny letters. "To the love of my life and our miracle, always together." The same words he had had engraved 8 years before. A gift to celebrate the news of the pregnancy. His legs weakened, and he needed to lean on the table to avoid falling. The reality he was trying to deny was becoming increasingly inescapable. "How did you end up on the streets?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Do you remember anything before?" The girl frowned, concentrating with the seriousness of an adult. "A woman took care of me," she said finally. "She was always sick. She said I had an important father, but he couldn't know about me. She died when I was little. After that, I was on the streets." The millionaire exchanged a meaningful look with the doctor, who was finishing packing up the collected samples. "I'll take this to the lab personally," said Dr. Mendez. "I've requested absolute priority. We'll have results within a few hours." When the doctor left, a heavy silence settled in the office. The millionaire watched the girl as if he were seeing a ghost, which in a sense he was. She represented the resurrection of hopes long buried, of possibilities he had forced himself to abandon. "Are you hungry?" he asked finally, noticing the devoured sandwich. The girl nodded shyly. "Let's get some more food then." He extended a hesitant hand, a gesture so simple and yet so full of meaning. After a moment of hesitation, the girl placed her small hand in his. Together, they walked out of the office, each step bringing them closer to a truth that would transform their lives forever. The estate's kitchen, normally the exclusive territory of the hired chefs, became the unlikely refuge of the millionaire and the girl. Sitting in a more secluded corner, they shared a surreal moment of domesticity, while the staff tried to disguise their curiosity with forced professionalism. The child ate a second sandwich, this time accompanied by a generous bowl of chocolate ice cream. From time to time, her eyes met the millionaire's, and a silent understanding seemed to flow between them. A connection that defied logical explanation. "Have you always lived on the streets?" he asked, watching how she held the spoon with an instinctive delicacy that contrasted with her ragged appearance. The girl shook her head negatively. "The sick woman took care of me first. In a small house. She said it was dangerous to go out. Do you remember her name?" "Aunt Rose," she replied after a moment of reflection. "But she said she wasn't really my aunt." The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. Rose had been his wife's housekeeper, a devoted woman who had disappeared around the same time. Everyone had assumed that both had been victims of the same crime, a kidnapping that went wrong perhaps. But if Rose had survived long enough to care for the girl— "And your mother?" he asked, his voice faltering slightly on the word. "Do you remember her?" The girl frowned, concentrating intensely. "Sometimes I have dreams," she said finally. "A beautiful woman singing, hair like sunshine, sweet smell." She touched the necklace, which the millionaire had returned. "She gave me this, said I should never lose it." Each word was a blade in the man's heart. His wife, with her golden hair and her lavender perfume, her melodious voice singing to her growing belly, promising never to leave the baby alone. Outside the kitchen, the turmoil continued. The bride had finally emerged from her isolation, accompanied by her parents and a lawyer who took her calls even on a Sunday. Her beautiful face was marked by tears of anger, not sadness. One of the millionaire's assistants entered the kitchen discreetly. "Sir, Miss is demanding to speak with you. Threatens to call the press if she's not received within 5 minutes." The millionaire sighed, running his hand through his prematurely graying hair. "Tell her I'll be in the library in a few minutes." Turning to the girl, he forced a reassuring smile. "I need to take care of a few things. Can you stay here with Maria? She'll take good care of you." The child nodded, although her eyes showed a subtle fear, the fear of abandonment, so familiar to those who have lived on the streets. "Will you come back?" The simple question hit him like a physical blow. "Yes," he promised with an intensity that surprised even himself. "I'll always come back to you." Heading to the library, the millionaire prepared himself for the inevitable confrontation. The bride was waiting, surrounded by her small army of support. Parents, lawyer, and her own personal assistant, who was typing frantically on her cell phone. "This is absolutely unacceptable," she began as soon as he entered. "Do you have any idea of the humiliation, the embarrassment you're causing me?" "I apologize for the inconvenience," he replied mechanically, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. "Inconvenience?" she laughed, a sound as sharp as broken glass. "You interrupted our wedding because of a street urchin with a ridiculous story. The guests are all gossiping. Social media is already exploding with speculation." The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. "My client is proposing a discreet solution. We resume the ceremony, explain the incident as a charitable misunderstanding, and deal with the child's situation later." The millionaire stared at the man with an icy glare. "There will be no resumption of the ceremony." "What?" The bride took a step forward. "You can't be serious." "I'm perfectly serious. I believe that this girl is my daughter." A stunned silence followed the statement. It was the bride's father who broke it with an incredulous laugh. "Your daughter, the child your wife was carrying when she disappeared. This is completely irrational." The investigators confirmed that the chances of survival were 0. "I'm waiting for the results of the DNA test," replied the millionaire with a calm he didn't feel. "But the necklace she wears, it's impossible that it's a coincidence." The bride crossed her arms, her eyes flashing with a contained fury. "And if she is your daughter, what do you intend to do? Take in a street child, dirty and uneducated? Imagine what the press will do with that. The impact on business, on your reputation." "If she is my daughter," he said slowly, each word laden with growing conviction, "I will do what I should have done 8 years ago. I will find whoever took her and her mother from me, and above all, I will be the father she deserves." The bride recoiled as if she'd been slapped. "You're insane," she whispered, incredulous. "Completely." "Maybe," he agreed with a slight smile. "But for the first time in 8 years, I feel like I'm seeing things clearly." Most of the guests had already left, taking with them stories that would soon turn into rumors, fueling gossip columns and online speculation. The bride's family retreated after a final exchange of veiled threats and expressions of disbelief. The bride herself left the estate in a silent rage, promising retribution through her icy glare. None of that mattered now. The phone rang, startling him. It was Dr. Mendez. "The results are in," the doctor said, his voice conveying a contained emotion. "Would you prefer that I come over there?" "Yes," replied the millionaire, feeling his heart race. "Immediately." While he waited, he allowed himself to approach the sleeping girl. Her face, clean after a bath gently supervised by one of the staff, revealed features that he now recognized clearly. The shape of her eyes, the gentle curve of her chin, they were undeniable reflections of his wife. The soft sound of the door opening announced the doctor's arrival. Without words, only with a look, the millionaire asked for confirmation. Dr. Mendez nodded, handing him an envelope. "It's her," he said simply. "The genetic markers leave no room for doubt. The probability of paternity is over 99.9%. Even expecting it, even having felt the truth in his core since the moment he saw the necklace, the scientific confirmation hit the millionaire like a physical wave. His legs gave way and he fell into a nearby chair. "How is this possible?" he murmured, more to himself than to the doctor. "All the investigators, all the searches." Dr. Mendez sat down in front of him, speaking in a low voice so as not to wake the child. Based on what the girl told me, I have a theory. Rose, your housekeeper, was extremely loyal to your wife. If there was some kind of threat, something that made them fear for their lives, she could have helped your wife to hide. But why not contact me? Why let me believe they were dead? Only the girl, or whoever was with them, can answer that. But if your wife passed away while in hiding, leaving the child in Rose's care, the millionaire closed his eyes, assimilating the renewed pain. His wife was really gone then. The small hope that had been born, that she too might be alive somewhere, died now, replaced by the bittersweet certainty that part of her had survived through her daughter. "What happens now?" asked the doctor after a moment of respectful silence. "Now," replied the millionaire, opening his eyes with renewed determination, "I start being a father." On the sofa, the girl stirred, waking up slowly. Her sleepy eyes met the millionaire's, and a small, hesitant smile appeared on her lips. "I had a dream," she said, sitting up and hugging her knees. The beautiful woman was there. She said, "I found my way home." The millionaire felt a lump in his throat, an emotion so intense that he could barely breathe. With hesitant steps, he approached and knelt before her. "You're home now," he confirmed, his voice choked. "And I have something very important to tell you." The girl tilted her head, her eyes, so like her mother's, fixed on him with a wisdom beyond her years. "I took a test, a special exam," he explained, choosing his words carefully. "And we found something very important. I'm your father." A silence filled the room as the girl processed the information. For an agonizing moment, the millionaire feared that she would reject the idea, that years of involuntary abandonment had created an insurmountable barrier. "The woman in my dream said that," she replied finally. "She said my father had sad eyes like yours." Dr. Mendez quietly excused himself, leaving father and daughter in this sacred moment of reconnection. The millionaire, unable to contain the tears that were now running freely down his face, extended his arms in a silent invitation. The girl hesitated for only a second before launching herself forward, allowing herself to be enveloped in a hug that both had waited for all their lives. "I'll never leave you alone again," he whispered against her hair. "I promise." In less than 24 hours, the story was in every newspaper, news website, and gossip show. Billionaire jilts bride at the altar for lost daughter. Heiress from the streets, the beggar who became a princess. Romance destroyed by mysterious child. The millionaire watched the headlines on his tablet, sitting on the edge of the bed where his daughter slept soundly. The girl's first night in a real bed, after years of sleeping in cardboard boxes and makeshift shelters. She clung to the pillow as if fearing it might disappear, and even in her sleep, her small hand held on to the necklace, her talisman, her only connection to the past until now. A soft knock on the door announced the arrival of his lawyer, a trusted man who had been with him for over a decade. "We have some problems," he said in a low voice, entering the room. "Your ex-bride's family is moving heaven and earth to turn this into the scandal of the year." "Expected," replied the millionaire, his gaze never leaving his daughter's sleeping face. "They're insinuating that you knew about the girl's existence all along, that you kept her hidden for some obscure reason and orchestrated this revelation to publicly humiliate the bride." A bitter smile crossed the millionaire's lips. "Creative. Your former partner, the one you cut ties with after your wife's disappearance, he's giving interviews, claiming that your recent behavior demonstrates mental instability." This caught the millionaire's attention. He turned, his eyes suddenly alert. "Is Mario involved in this?" "Apparently. He insinuated that you fabricated this whole story as a way to escape the wedding, and that you're emotionally unfit to care for a child." The millionaire clenched his fists involuntarily. Mario had been more than a partner. He was his closest friend until his wife's disappearance. The breakup was never publicly explained, but there were suspicions that the millionaire kept only to himself. He wants temporary custody, continued the lawyer, each word carefully chosen. He claims that, as the designated godfather in the original will you made when your wife was pregnant, he has a legal right to protect the child's interests until your mental stability is evaluated. That's absurd, replied the millionaire, although his calm tone contrasted with the cold fury in his eyes. The DNA test confirms that she's my daughter. No judge would listen to this nonsense. Under normal circumstances, I would agree. But the media is already creating a narrative. Society loves to see the mighty fall, and Mario has important political connections that you, deliberately, never cultivated. In bed, the girl stirred restlessly, as if even in her dreams she could sense the growing tension in the room. The millionaire immediately softened his expression, gently stroking her hair until she calmed down again. I need to find out what happened, he said finally. With my wife, with Rose, with my daughter during all these years. There are missing pieces in this story, and something tells me that Mario knows more than he's letting on. The lawyer nodded gravely. I'll reactivate the private investigation team. Absolute discretion this time. And I want enhanced protection for her, added the millionaire, indicating the child with a gentle gesture. 24 hours a day. No one I don't personally approve gets near her. Considering the media coverage, it would be prudent to keep her out of the public eye for now. Perhaps one of your more secluded properties. The millionaire shook his head, determined. I'm not going to hide her like she's a shameful secret. She spent too much time in the shadows. We're going to face this head-on together. When the lawyer left, the millionaire turned his attention back to his sleeping daughter. How could he explain to a 7-year-old that after finally finding a father, they now faced a battle that could separate them again? The next morning brought new challenges. Photographers crowded the gates of the estate, reporters shouted questions incessantly, and social media exploded with increasingly wild speculation. The girl watched everything with wide eyes from the window of the master bedroom, where the millionaire had improvised a special breakfast. Why are all those people here? She asked, nibbling on a toast with jelly. They're curious about you, he replied, choosing his words carefully. They're not used to stories like ours. Will they go away later? Eventually, he promised, although he knew that the media was only the beginning of his problems. The phone rang, and the millionaire's personal assistant answered promptly. Her face paled as she listened. It's the legal department, she said, handing over the phone. The judge has granted an emergency hearing for this afternoon. Mario's petition has been accepted for consideration. The millionaire accepted the phone, feeling an icy wave of fear run down his spine, a fear unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't fear for himself, for his reputation or fortune. It was the primal terror of a father about to lose his newly found daughter. Do we have a chance? He asked after hearing the details. It's complicated, replied the head of the legal department. The fact that the girl lived on the streets without official identification or registration makes everything more complex. Mario is manipulating the narrative, suggesting that you could have found the girl years ago if you had really tried. He's insinuating negligence, even if involuntary. The millionaire's eyes met his daughter's, who was watching with that acute perception that children have for danger, even when they don't fully understand it. Do whatever is necessary, he instructed. Use every resource, every connection. I'm not going to lose her again. Hanging up, he forced a reassuring smile. How about we explore the house today? It's big, almost like a castle. The girl returned the smile, but there was a shadow of worry in her eyes, the eyes that so resembled her lost mother's. Are the bad people going to take me away? She asked suddenly. The question as direct and inescapable as only children can formulate. The millionaire felt his heart clench. After years of negotiations and difficult business decisions, he found himself disarmed by the sincerity of a child. Some people are trying, he admitted finally, deciding that honesty would be his only way. but I'm going to fight with everything I have to keep you with me. That's a promise." She nodded gravely, as if weighing his words. "The beautiful woman in my dreams says we should trust." The millionaire swallowed hard, feeling an almost tangible presence of his lost wife in those simple words. "Then we'll trust," he agreed, extending his hand to her. As they left the room to explore the estate, he could not imagine that their real battle was just beginning, nor that his greatest enemy was much closer than he thought. The courthouse was an imposing building of marble and dark wood, designed to intimidate even the most confident. On the entrance steps, a crowd of reporters, photographers, and onlookers anxiously awaited the arrival of the protagonists of what was already being called the custody case of the century. Inside an armored limousine parked at a safe distance, the millionaire adjusted his tie for the third time. Beside him, the girl wore a simple but elegant dress, chosen personally by him the night before. Her hair, once tangled and dirty, now fell in soft curls around her face. "Remember what we agreed on?" he asked gently. The girl nodded, her fingers playing nervously with the necklace. "Always stay close to you or the nice lady. And if anyone asks you difficult or confusing questions, I say I want to talk to my dad first," she completed, repeating the instructions they had practiced. The term "dad" still sounded new and precious on the girl's lips, sending a wave of emotion through the millionaire every time he heard it. In just 3 days, the bond between them had strengthened in ways that defied logic and time, as if the lost years were desperately trying to compress and disappear. "Are you ready?" he asked, offering his hand. In response, she placed her small hand in his and took a deep breath, displaying a courage that shamed many adults. "I am." The walk up the courthouse steps was a test of endurance. Flashes exploded from all sides, questions were shouted incessantly, and the girl squeezed her father's hand with increasing force at each step. Security guards formed a protective corridor around them, but nothing could completely filter out the chaos. Inside the building, the millionaire immediately spotted his adversary. Mario waited with his team of elegantly dressed lawyers, his face displaying an expression of concern so perfect that only someone who had known him for decades could identify as false. "Hello, old friend," greeted Mario, approaching with open arms in a theatrically conciliatory gesture. "I'm glad you brought the little one. It shows that despite everything, you understand the seriousness of the situation." The millionaire subtly positioned himself between Mario and the girl. "Spare us the performance, Mario. Save it for the judge." "Still the same," sighed Mario with false regret. Bending down slightly, he tried to make eye contact with the girl. "Hello, little one. I'm an old friend of your father's. In fact, I was chosen to be your godfather even before you were born." The girl took a step back, instinctively pressing herself against the millionaire's leg. Something in the stranger's smile triggered a primal alarm in her mind. The same alarm that had kept her alive on the streets for so long. "I think she has good judgment of character," commented the millionaire coldly. "Come on, the hearing is about to begin." The courtroom was partially empty. A small miracle achieved by the millionaire's legal team, which had successfully argued for the minor's privacy. Only the parties directly involved, their lawyers and court-appointed officers, were present. The judge, a middle-aged man with piercing eyes and a neutral expression, entered and everyone stood. "This is a preliminary hearing," he began after the initial formalities. "We are here to determine temporary custody arrangements for the minor recently identified as the biological daughter of Mr. Millionaire, according to DNA tests verified by this court." Mario's lawyer rose first, his posture exuding confidence. "Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned about the child's well-being. As the designated godfather, in a still valid will, he feels a moral and legal responsibility to ensure that the minor receives appropriate care during this clearly tumultuous period of transition." For nearly 20 minutes, the lawyer painted a troubling picture. an emotionally unstable billionaire after years of mourning, making impulsive decisions, exposing a vulnerable child to the ruthless media, all while facing the breakup of an engagement and possible legal proceedings arising. Therefrom, we are only requesting temporary supervised custody, he concluded smoothly, until complete psychological evaluations can be performed and a suitable transition plan is established. My client has only the child's best interest at heart. When it was the millionaire's lawyer's turn, the approach was direct and fact-centered. Your Honor, the DNA tests unequivocally confirm paternity. The law is clear regarding the primary right of biological parents. My client has unlimited resources to protect and care for his daughter, and has already initiated all necessary processes to legally regularize her situation. The girl, sitting between her father and the social worker, watched everything with attentive eyes that missed no detail. Occasionally, her gaze met Mario's, and she instinctively squeezed her father's hand. The judge, after hearing both sides, turned to the social worker. Ms. Rodriguez, you have spent the last 48 hours observing the interaction between the minor and her biological father. What is your initial assessment? The woman straightened up, her professionalism evident in every word. Despite the short period, Your Honor, I observed clear signs of a healthy bond developing. The child demonstrates increasing trust, and the father has consistently responded to her emotional and practical needs. I have not identified any red flags that would justify immediate separation. The judge nodded, considering. And what about the minor's emotional state after presumably traumatic years? She demonstrates remarkable resilience, Your Honor. As would be expected, there are signs of insecurity and fear of abandonment, but these appear to be mitigated by the stability and affection she is currently receiving. Mario's face hardened almost imperceptibly. Something was not going as planned. The judge then addressed the girl directly, his voice softening considerably. I know this situation is very confusing, little one, but I need to ask, do you feel safe with your father? The girl looked first at the millionaire, then at Mario, and finally at the judge. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but perfectly audible. On the streets, I learned to feel when people are dangerous, she said, with the raw wisdom of those who have survived adversity. He, she pointed to the millionaire, has sad but good eyes. The other man, her gaze darted quickly to Mario before looking away, smiles with his mouth but not with his eyes, like the people who stole other kids at the park. An absolute silence fell over the room. The judge studied the child's face carefully, looking for any sign that she had been instructed to say such words. She is obviously confused, Mario's lawyer interjected quickly. Traumatized by her experiences on the streets and easily manipulated in her current state. The judge raised his hand, silencing him. The child seems quite lucid to me. After a brief consultation with the judicial assistants, the judge announced his preliminary decision. A complete psychological evaluation will be scheduled for both father and daughter, and a formal hearing will be held in 30 days. The relief that flooded the millionaire was so intense that he had to struggle to maintain his composure. The girl, however, simply rested her head against his arm as if she had never doubted the outcome. Mario, on the other hand, couldn't completely hide his annoyance. As he passed them on the way out, he leaned in briefly. This isn't over, he murmured, low enough for only the millionaire to hear. Some secrets should remain buried. Think about it. The millionaire stiffened, feeling a familiar chill. The same one he had felt 8 years earlier when his wife had mentioned days before disappearing that something strange was happening with the company accounts and that Mario was acting suspiciously. At that moment, he knew. Maybe he always had known. Somewhere deep in his consciousness, the search for the truth about his wife's disappearance and his daughter's lost years had just gained a new and sinister focus. 3 weeks had passed since the preliminary hearing. The estate, once a cold monument to wealth and power, had transformed. Children's laughter echoed through the once silent hallways. Colorful drawings, decorated stainless steel refrigerator doors, and carefully selected toys occupied spaces previously reserved for abstract sculptures and corporate awards. The millionaire found himself in his office, surrounded by piles of documents, reports from private investigators, and old financial records. Tirelessly, he searched for the missing link. The connection between his former partner and his wife's disappearance 8 years earlier. "We found something," announced his lawyer, entering without ceremony and placing a folder on the table. A former security employee of Mario's finally agreed to talk. "He's in hiding, terrified, but he provided information that perfectly matches the suspicious bank movements we identified." The millionaire opened the folder with slightly trembling fingers. The pages contained detailed testimonies, dates, locations, names, and the confirmation of his worst fears. His wife had discovered an elaborate scheme of embezzlement orchestrated by Mario. Confronted, he had ordered her kidnapping, only to scare her, allegedly. But something went wrong. The housekeeper, Rose, was with her at the time and ended up involved. When they discovered that the wife was pregnant and had gone into premature labor due to the stress, Rose managed to help her give birth in precarious conditions. "She died a few hours after giving birth," murmured the millionaire, reading the words that confirmed the loss his heart already knew. "Rose fled with the baby, fearing for the child's life, and kept the girl hidden for years, constantly changing locations," completed the lawyer, "until her own health worsened and she passed away, leaving the child alone." The millionaire closed his eyes, absorbing the renewed pain and the icy fury that grew in his chest. Mario knew. All this time he knew. "We have enough evidence for the authorities now," assured the lawyer. "He won't escape this time." At the office door, a small movement caught both their attention. The girl was there, partially hidden, her wide eyes fixed on her father. How much had she heard? "Come here, little one," called the millionaire gently, pushing aside the documents and opening his arms. She ran to him, burying her face in his chest, as she always did whenever something scared or confused her. "Did that man hurt my mother?" she asked in a choked voice. The millionaire exchanged a meaningful look with the lawyer, who discreetly withdrew from the office, closing the door. "Yes," he replied, opting for the simplified truth. "He did something very wrong, and your mother found out. She was very brave and honest, just like you." The girl raised her face, tears shining in her eyes. "Is that why he wants to take me away? Because I'm afraid of him?" "He wants to take you away because he's afraid of you," corrected the millionaire gently. "Afraid of what you represent, what you might remember, but that's not going to happen, I promise." That night, as he tucked his daughter into bed, the millionaire noticed a subtle change in her. The usual insecurity she showed at bedtime, the fear that he might disappear during the night, had given way to a resolute calm. "It's going to be okay now," she said sleepily, holding the necklace as she always did. The beautiful woman said the truth was coming. The millionaire sat on the edge of the bed, watching her fall asleep. Her dreams about her mother, so vivid and specific, sometimes disconcerted him. Were they just the defense mechanism of a traumatized child, or something more? Some kind of connection that transcended rational understanding? Whatever the answer, he knew that her words were correct. The truth was finally emerging from the shadows, and with it, the opportunity for justice and closure. The next morning, everything happened with dizzying speed. Plainclothes police officers arrived at the estate to collect his formal testimony. Simultaneously, in another part of the city, Mario was taken into custody for questioning. The news leaked to the media almost instantly, drastically changing the public narrative. "The reporters are calling non-stop," informed the assistant, entering the office where the millionaire was finalizing his statement to the investigators. "Everyone wants your side of the story." And the ex-bride gave an exclusive interview claiming she was an innocent victim in Mario's machinations. The millionaire just shook his head, neither surprised nor interested. His focus was solely on protecting his daughter and seeking justice for his wife. "I have an idea," he said to the assistant. "Contact the Children's Support Foundation. I want to transform part of the estate into a shelter for homeless children, and initiate the procedures to create a scholarship in my wife's name, focused on business ethics and child protection." The assistant smiled, nodding with approval. "And what about the reporters? Tell them I'll make a single statement in 1 week. Until then, I need privacy for my family." When the investigators left, the millionaire looked for his daughter and found her in the garden, talking animatedly with the social worker who now visited daily, more as a friend than as an official supervisor. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, running towards him with a joy that was still new and precious to both of them. "Look what I drew." It was a simple drawing, 3 stick figures, 1 big and 2 small, all holding hands. Above, a smiling sun, and in the corner, an ethereal figure that seemed to float above all the others. "Who are these?" he asked, although he suspected the answer. "You, me, and the new little sister we're going to adopt," she explained with the crystal-clear logic of children. "And up here is Mommy watching us from heaven?" The millionaire felt his heart expand with an emotion so intense that he could barely breathe. Somehow this child, who had known only abandonment and hardship, had kept intact her capacity for love and hope. "Little sister?" he asked, his voice choked. "Yes," she confirmed matter-of-factly. "You said you're going to help children without families, like I was. We could start by giving a family to a girl. Nobody should sleep in cardboard boxes, ever." The social worker discreetly wiped away a tear while the millionaire knelt down to hug his daughter. This hug contained silent promises of healing, of a new beginning, of a legacy transformed from hatred and greed to love and compassion. At that moment, as he held his daughter in the golden light of the late afternoon, the millionaire felt an almost palpable presence around him, as if somehow his wife was there, witnessing the rebirth of the family she had loved so much. The grand hall of the estate, which just a month before had been decorated for a wedding that never happened, was now transformed. Colorful streamers, balloons, and hand-drawn posters replaced the sophisticated floral decorations. Children of various ages ran among the guests, their laughter filling every corner of the once austere space. The millionaire watched everything from the top of the staircase, dressed casually in jeans and a simple shirt, a look that would have been unthinkable for the man he had been just weeks ago. His eyes automatically searched for his daughter in the crowd and found her surrounded by a small group of children, all wearing colorful name tags. It was the day of the official inauguration of the Fresh Start Foundation, established in record time to serve vulnerable children. The first project, already fully operational, was a daycare program that operated in a part of the estate itself, completely renovated for this purpose. "Your wife would be proud," commented Dr. Mendez, approaching with 2 glasses of juice. "Very proud." The millionaire accepted the drink with a grateful smile. "Sometimes I feel like she's guiding all of this. Like every step has been carefully orchestrated to bring us together and transform our pain into something meaningful." In the previous week, Mario had confessed his crimes, negotiating a reduced sentence in exchange for complete information. The full story finally emerged: the embezzlement scheme that his wife had accidentally discovered, the plan to scare her that went terribly wrong, and the subsequent years of surveillance over Rose and the child, ensuring that they remained hidden and eventually on the streets, invisible and unlikely to be found. The media had initially fed on the scandal, but soon the narrative shifted. The story of redemption, of a child who found her way back home against all odds, touched hearts and inspired a wave of support for the new foundation. The ex-bride had disappeared from the public radar after unsuccessfully trying to position herself as a collateral victim of the plot. Her last public comment had been a bitter note about how some people just aren't meant for conventional happiness, an observation that, ironically, contained more truth than she intended. Daddy! Daddy! The girl's voice cut through his thoughts. She was running towards him, pulling by the hand a smaller girl with big, frightened eyes and an obviously borrowed dress. This is Sarah. She has nobody. Can we show her special room now? The millionaire's heart swelled with that familiar feeling, that sense that there wasn't enough room in his chest to contain all the love he felt. He knelt down to be at the two girls' height. "Hello, Sarah," he greeted gently. "Welcome to our home." Little Sarah, no more than 5 years old, looked at him with the natural distrust of someone who had known only disappointments. The millionaire's daughter squeezed her hand encouragingly. "It's okay, Sarah. He looks serious, but he has the softest heart in the world, and the pink room is beautiful. It has a bed that looks like a princess's." The millionaire exchanged a quick glance with the social worker who was discreetly observing the interaction. She nodded imperceptibly, a sign that Sarah was, in fact, one of the most urgent placement cases they had identified. An orphan who had gone through 3 troubled foster homes in her few years of life. "How about you two show me this special room?" he suggested, offering a hand to each girl. "I think it still needs a few personal touches." As they climbed the stairs, his daughter chattered happily about all the games they could play together, all the books they would read, all the adventures they would have. Sarah remained silent, but her eyes registered everything with the acute intensity of children who have learned to assess situations quickly. The pink room, adjacent to the millionaire's daughters, had been decorated with the same care and attention, although in a less extravagant way, so as not to intimidate a child accustomed to scarcity. A comfortable bed with a simple canopy, shelves with carefully selected books and toys, and an art box with materials for drawing and painting. "See? Isn't it beautiful?" asked his daughter enthusiastically. "And our rooms have a secret door that connects the two. So if you have nightmares or get scared, you can call me. I have nightmares sometimes too, but Daddy always comes when I call." Sarah looked around cautiously, as if fearing that everything could disappear at any moment. How long can I stay?" The millionaire felt a lump in his throat. The seemingly simple question carried the weight of countless goodbyes and broken promises. "For as long as you want," he replied with sincerity. "This room is yours for as long as you want it to be." "And if I want to stay forever?" asked Sarah, her voice almost inaudible. "Then we'll be very happy," he replied, feeling his eyes well up. "Because we believe that families can be formed in many different ways. That's what happened to me and Daddy." Leaving the girls to explore the room, the millionaire returned to the hallway where the social worker awaited him. "She connected with Sarah instantly," commented the woman. "It's impressive to watch." "My daughter seems to have a radar for wounded hearts," he replied with a soft smile, "and an uncanny determination to fix them." "Just like her mother," observed the social worker, who had known his wife years before. "She always saw the potential for healing where others saw only irreparable damage." The rest of the party unfolded with the chaotic and joyful energy that only children can create. The millionaire circulated among the guests, a peculiar mix of executives, celebrities committed to social causes, social work professionals, and of course dozens of children benefiting from the new program. As dusk fell, when the last guests were leaving, he found his daughter and Sarah asleep on the large living room couch, surrounded by colorful drawings and remnants of burst balloons. Carefully, so as not to wake them, he sat in the free space next to them, feeling a peace he never believed possible again. His assistant approached silently, extending a tablet. "The adoption process paperwork has been approved for preliminary submission," he informed in a low voice. "And the inauguration of the pediatric wing at the hospital in your wife's name is confirmed for next month." "Thank you," replied the millionaire, glancing briefly away from the sleeping faces of the girls. "And the funding for the research on homeless children?" "Transferred this morning. The university has already assembled the research team." With a nod of approval, he dismissed the assistant and turned his attention back to the children. With infinite care, he brushed a strand of hair from Sarah's face and adjusted the necklace that his daughter never took off. The journey that had begun so dramatically, with a dirty little girl interrupting his wedding, had transformed into something he never could have imagined. The man he had been a month ago, cold, distant, consumed by ambition and bitterness, seemed like a stranger now, a version of himself that had been lost in the desert of pain. His daughter stirred in her sleep, mumbling something unintelligible before snuggling closer to Sarah, as if even unconscious she felt the duty to protect her new friend. The millionaire smiled, feeling a deep certainty that, despite the tragedy that had separated them for so many years, they were exactly where they were meant to be. The setting sun cast golden rays through the large windows, illuminating the three figures on the couch, a man reborn and two children who, each in their own way, had found their way home. Not the home made of walls and luxury, but the one built with something infinitely more precious and durable: love, understanding, and the promise of never being alone again. In his chest, the millionaire felt the weight of the necklace identical to the one his daughter wore, the one he had started wearing again since the day of their reunion. Touching it lightly, he whispered a silent promise to the wife he could no longer see, but whose presence he felt constantly. "We're rebuilding, my love. We're transforming pain into purpose. And none of us will ever be lost again." In the millionaire's lap, where his protective hands rested, Sarah unconsciously sought contact, her small fingers finding his even in her sleep. And for a fleeting moment, it seemed to the man that the circle was complete, that the universe, with all its apparent cruelty and randomness, possessed also a profound and mysterious benevolence. The future, which for so long had seemed just a grey extension of empty days, now shone with possibilities. There would be challenges, certainly, two children deeply marked by abandonment and loss, a business empire to be redirected towards more humane purposes, an entire community of needy children who now looked to him as a beacon of hope. But for the first time in 8 long years, tomorrow was not something to be feared or simply endured. It was a promise, an invitation, a gift to be received with open arms and heart. The girl who had interrupted his wedding had transformed his life in ways that no fortune ever could. And in her eyes, the same eyes that had paralyzed him at the altar, he saw now not only the reflection of a lost love, but the path to a new and deeper love, the love that heals, that redeems, that finds light, even in the darkest shadows. Out there, beyond the gates of the estate, the world continued with its relentless hustle and bustle. Here inside, in this perfect moment, 3 wounded hearts began to beat in a new rhythm, the rhythm of family, of belonging, of home finally found. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day.